Welcome to English Podcast 2.0, the easiest way to learn English on the go.
You know that feeling where everything on the outside looks, well, fine, maybe even pretty good. But inside you just feel completely lost or stuck, just sort of out of sync with everything.
Yeah, it's such a strange paradox, isn't it? Like, life's moving all around you, things are happening, but you feel like you're, I don't know, standing still, disconnected.
Exactly. And we've been digging into this really honest reflection, this conversation about that exact feeling. It's surprisingly common, I think.
Totally. And it offers some really practical ideas for navigating those times when you just feel off course.
Yeah. So think of this as us unpacking that conversation, trying to get to the heart of, why we feel like that and what we can actually learn from it.
Right. So our mission here in this deep dive is really to pull out those core ideas, the little bits of wisdom, maybe some practical stuff from that reflection.
A deep dive into understanding this feeling and figuring out a way through it, basically.
So if you've ever felt that disconnect, maybe adrift, unsure, or just not quite feeling like you, then yeah, this is definitely for you. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's start right there then, just recognizing that feeling. The conversation we looked at describes it really well. I thought that stuck in the mud feeling.
Yes. And it's not always some, big dramatic meltdown, is it? Sometimes it's much quieter, like life looks okay, maybe even successful on paper. But inside, you've got this sense of being lost or just kind of running on autopilot.
Yeah, autopilot. That's a good way to put it. There was this image shared sitting in the car, before going into work or something.
Right.
And outside, it's just someone sitting there. But inside,
Yeah.
they're staring at the steering wheel thinking, is this it? Is this what the next 10 years feel like?
Oh, wow. Yeah. That really captures it, doesn't it? Nothing's changed externally,
Yeah.
but internally it suddenly feels like this, like you said, this huge maze.
Yeah.
And you get that feeling that everyone else somehow got the instructions, the maps for life, and they're all navigating perfectly.
And you're just wandering. No map, no compass, nothing.
Exactly. And if you felt that mapeless feeling, you know how isolating it can be.
Definitely. But just noticing it, acknowledging, okay, I feel lost right now. That's the first really crucial step, isn't it?
It is. And what's interesting is how this reflection talks about it. It doesn't frame being stuck as like the end of the road.
No.
It sees it more as a potential turning point.
Right. Because that discomfort, that feeling of being stuck, even though it's painful, can actually be a kind of wake-up call.
Yeah, like a signal that maybe something just needs to shift. Not that you failed, but just that, okay, time for a change.
The conversation called it painful but powerful, which makes sense. The discomfort sort of forces you to stop, maybe ask some harder questions.
Exactly. Getting to that point where you're like, wait, hold on, what am I actually doing here?
Right.
That's not the end. It could be the start of getting some clarity, the beginning of something new, as they put it.
Okay, so that leads to the big question, why? Why do we get off course like that? This reflection suggests it's often not about, making terrible choices necessarily.
No, it's often more subtle.
Yeah.
It's about listening to, too many voices except our own.
Ah, okay.
That resonates.
Yeah, think about it. We're just bombarded, aren't we? Parents, teachers, friends, social media, what society expects.
All the noise.
All the noise. And over time, it's easy to internalize those voices so much that you kind of forget to listen to your own guidance. You end up living by someone else's rules.
Someone else's definition of success or happiness.
Exactly. There's this great analogy used about having a little compass inside you. Your heart, your gut feeling, that instinct.
Yeah, your intuition.
Right. And the point made is that if you ignore that inner compass, even if you're just, say, a few degrees off course at first, following that external path, maybe what you think you should do can eventually lead you miles away from where you were actually meant to be. So you end up on a path that, I don't know, looks good on paper, maybe, but it just doesn't feel right in your core.
Precisely. There was an example about choosing a college major because it sounded impressive or would please other people.
Oh, I know people who've done that.
Right. But the person didn't actually like it.
Yeah.
And years later, even with the degree, it just led to this feeling of, confusion and regret.
Yeah, which really highlights how important it is to check in with yourself, doesn't it? To ask that question, am I doing this because I want to or because I think I'm supposed to?
That simple question, it can be powerful for recalibrating that inner compass.
But tuning into that inner voice, it can feel kind of scary sometimes. Because it often leads you into, well, uncertainty.
Oh, absolutely. We're sort of trained to want plans, right? Answers, the 5-year roadmap. When things feel unknown, the default is often, panic. But this reflection flips that idea.
Yeah.
It argues that uncertainty isn't always a bad thing, that actually it can be a gift.
A gift? Okay, how so?
Because it gives us space. Space to just pause, to think, to explore a bit without feeling like you need all the answers right now.
Right, without a pressure.
Yeah. Space to maybe rediscover what actually matters to you, away from all that external noise we were talking about.
Okay, I can see that.
There's this mention of someone deliberately stepping away from things, leaving a job even, with no plan B, which sounds
crazy.
Yeah, totally counterintuitive. But the months that followed, even with all the not knowing, were described as being full of growth.
Really?
Simple things, actually. Reading, resting, taking long walks, learning something totally new just because they were interested.
That kind of unstructured time.
Exactly. That lack of a rigid path can make you curious again. It opens you up. You start trying new things, listening more deeply to the world, yes, but also to that quieter inner voice.
So it's scary, sure, but the idea is that this uncertain phase, this gap, is actually where the magic happens. Yeah. The space between the old and the new.
That's the framing. So the message, I think, for anyone feeling unsure right now is that it's okay. Not having all the answers isn't like a failure.
Right.
It's maybe a phase to just try and stay open, stay curious, and trust that, something new is unfolding, even if you can't see the whole picture yet.
Okay. So let's say you've acknowledged the feeling. You're maybe trying to be okay with the uncertainty. What's the next step suggested? It involves looking inward again, right?
Yeah, looking inward. Right. But not necessarily at your to-do list or your productivity goals. Yeah. It's about looking at what really matters to you, connecting with your core values.
Values. Okay, sometimes that word feels a bit big.
I know, but the conversation breaks it down really simply.
Yeah.
Just think of them as your simple truths. Things like, I don't know, family or freedom, learning, kindness, maybe health, the fundamentals.
Gotcha. The things that are non-negotiable for you deep down.
Exactly. And a really powerful idea here is that feeling lost often happens because you've been sort of walking away from these values without realizing it. Yeah, drifting. You get busy, life happens, you get caught up in demands, and slowly you move away from the things that actually make you feel alive and fulfilled.
There was an example of that, wasn't there? Someone getting so focused on being productive.
Yes. So focused on hitting external targets that the things that really felt like them, maybe creative stuff like writing or just having real talks with friends, they just stopped.
Wow.
And the realization was that there had been this quiet drift away from what made me me.
That makes so much sense. So reconnecting with those values, those simple truths, it doesn't magically fix everything or give you a detailed map.
No, definitely not.
But it gives you back that compass. It points you in a direction that at least feels true to your heart, right? Even if the path itself is still a bit blurry.
Exactly. It gives you a sense of true north again.
Okay. And once you have that sense of direction, even if it's faint, there's another really important piece here. The power of small steps.
Oh, this is huge.
Yeah.
It really pushes back against the idea that change has to be this massive, dramatic event.
Right, like you have to overhaul your whole life overnight.
Yeah. Instead, the emphasis is on taking small, really small actions, setting tiny goals.
Like how small are we talking?
Like really small. Just write one sentence today. Or just take a 10-minute walk.
Yeah.
Or, on a really tough day, maybe it's just get out of bed and drink a glass of water. Or if you're learning a language, like the example given, just saying one sentence in English out loud. Tiny.
Okay. But how does that help when you feel massively lost?
Because it creates a sense of progress, even a tiny bit. And that progress, no matter how small it seems, starts to build confidence. It builds momentum.
Momentum, okay, like getting a little push forward.
Exactly. They're called small wins. And the advice is basically, just focus on getting one small, easy win today. It shifts you out of feeling totally paralyzed and into feeling like, okay, I can move forward, even just an inch.
I like that. Shifting from paralyzed to capable. Okay, so we're checking the inner compass, maybe embracing some uncertainty, taking small steps. But some days are still just going to be hard, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's where the conversation really highlights how much support matters. Having people around you makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily about needing someone to, fix your problems for you.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
There was this really touching story about having just one honest conversation with a friend. The person felt awkward about opening up.
Sure. Vulnerability is hard.
Totally. But the friend didn't try to fix anything. They just listened. And that simple act of listening, of witnessing, made the person feel profoundly seen.
Just being heard. Sometimes that's everything.
It really is. Just knowing someone understands or is even just there for you can make the load feel so much lighter. Whether it's a friend, a teacher, a mentor, maybe even finding an online community where people get it.
That connection is vital.
And it also sort of gently makes you more accountable, maybe. Knowing someone believes in you or is just checking in, it can help you show up for yourself, even when it feels really hard.
That makes sense. You don't want to let them down, but also you don't want to let yourself down when someone else sees potential.
Right. So the encouragement is really clear and kind. If you're feeling isolated, send that message, make that call.
Yeah. And reaching out isn't weak, is it? The conversation actually framed it as being strong for taking that step.
Exactly. It takes courage to ask for support.
Okay. So as you're doing all this navigating, taking steps, finding support, there's one more thing that reflection reminds us to do, which we often forget.
Which is?
Celebrating the victories, even the small ones.
Ah, yes. We are so good at remembering our mistakes, aren't we? We replay them vividly.
Oh, yeah.
But we tend to just gloss over the tiny victories, the moments we were brave,
Yeah.
the small steps forward.
What kind of things?
Like getting out of bed when you really didn't want to, or starting that journal you've been putting off, or asking someone for advice even though it felt awkward. These aren't nothing. The conversation calls them milestones.
Milestones on the journey, even if the journey feels messy.
Exactly. There was this lovely idea mentioned, keeping a sort of lost and found journal.
Oh, what's that?
Basically noting down moments when you felt really stuck or lost, and then later reflecting on what you actually learned or discovered in that difficult time.
Interesting. What was the insight from doing that?
The recurring realization was often, wow, I wasn't as lost as I thought. I was just growing.
That completely reframes it, doesn't it?
Totally. It helps you see those detours, those wrong turns, not as failures, but as, well, part of the learning process, the things that make you wiser, more human.
So it encourages you to look back at your own story, maybe a time you felt really lost.
Yeah. And ask yourself, okay, what did I actually find there? Maybe it was patience. Maybe it was a new friend who showed up. Maybe it was just the courage to start over.
And finding that, realizing that growth, that's worth celebrating.
Absolutely. And the celebration doesn't have to be, big fireworks.
Right.
It can just be a moment of kindness towards yourself, a small smile, taking a deep breath and acknowledging, okay, you're still on your way, and that's enough.
It's about acknowledging the journey, especially on the days you still feel a bit uncertain.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's try and bring this deep dive together. We've covered quite a bit.
We have.
We started with just recognizing that feeling, that sense of being lost or stuck, even when things look okay.
Yeah. And then seeing it not as an end, but maybe as a turning point, a signal for change.
Then we talked about listening to that inner voice, that compass inside, amidst all the external noise.
Right. And learning to maybe even embrace the uncertainty that comes with that, seeing it as space for growth.
Finding your way back to your core values, those simple truths that guide you.
And the huge power of taking those small, tiny steps forward to build momentum.
Not forgetting the vital role of support, of connection, of just being seen and heard.
Yeah, and finally, remembering to celebrate the journey, the growth, the milestones, not just focusing on the destination or the setbacks.
Exactly. Hopefully, exploring this reflection, this conversation has given you listening some, perspective, maybe made you feel a bit less alone if you're in that space.
And maybe offered a few practical ideas for navigating those moments.
So here's a final thought to maybe sit with after this deep dive. If feeling lost is actually a sign that you're in a period of real growth, what exciting uncharted territory might you be getting uniquely prepared to explore next?
That's a powerful question to ponder. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today.
Yeah, thank you for showing up and exploring this really fundamental human experience with us.